Okay, so maybe you're one of those people who can't walk past a yarn store without going in. Am I right?
Hmm.
And lately, you've been thinking, hey, what if knitting was more than just a hobby for me?
It's funny you say that. We've been taking a deep dive into RoleCatcher's whole deal on becoming a knitter.
And let me tell you,
And honestly, it's pretty eye-opening.
it's not just about like making a scarf for your grandma anymore.
Right. Like, what does a knitter actually do all day? It's way more intense than people realize.
RoleCatcher's Knitter, the complete career guide. They get into the nitty-gritty.
Just a whole thing.
But basically, it's more than just, scarves and sweaters, right?
Way more. I mean, you wouldn't believe it, but some knitters even work in, get this, medical textiles.
Medical textiles. Okay, now you have to explain that one.
Right. So picture this. Your knitting skills could actually be used to make, like, specialized bandages or even parts for prosthetics.
Wow, I had no idea.
It's all about creating fabrics with very specific qualities. RoleCatcher talks about flexibility, breathability,
Right.
even stuff that breaks down safely inside the body if it needs to. It's incredible.
So basically, knitting can be involved in cutting-edge medical technology.
Exactly. And it doesn't stop there. They also go into how technology is changing the whole knitting game.
Oh, yeah, I've heard about that.
Things like 3D knitting are blowing people's minds.
3D knitting. Okay, now that sounds seriously complicated.
It is. But imagine, like, printing a whole garment out of yarn instead of ink. That's essentially what it is.
Wow.
And RoleCatcher explains how it lets designers create these crazy complex shapes and designs that you just couldn't do with regular knitting.
That's wild. So you're saying that to be a knitter these days,
Yeah,
you need the traditional skills, but also be super open to all the new tech.
100%. RoleCatcher makes a really big deal about that. But like any career, it's not all sunshine and rainbows, you know?
Right, let's be real. It can't be all about the yarn.
Right. I mean, they talk about the creative freedom, the flexibility, which is amazing, but you got to be ready for the not so fun stuff too.
Okay, so what are some of the downsides? Spill the tea.
Well, for one, the income can be all over the place, especially when you're just starting out. And there's a lot of competition out there, especially online.
I bet.
Oh, and don't even get me started on the physical demands.
Yeah.
Hours of repetitive motions. Your hands and wrists are going to feel that.
Yeah, that's something people don't always think about.
Yeah,
So you need passion, but also a good dose of reality.
for sure. And RoleCatcher is very upfront about all that.
So say you're like, okay, I'm ready to become a knitter.
Hmm.
What does that journey actually look like? Is there like a typical career path?
Well, RoleCatcher lays out these different stages, you know,
Okay.
kind of like you're leveling up in a video game or something.
like it.
And they really focus on the junior knitter stage.
Junior knitter, okay.
They say that's like a really key point.
What happens at that level?
So you've mastered the basics, right? But now it's about bringing your own creativity to the table.
I see.
Like you're not just following instructions anymore. This is where you start collaborating with designers, maybe developing your own pattern.
Oh, we got a pattern design. You mentioned that earlier.
Right. So instead of just following someone else's blueprint,
Yeah.
you're creating it, like writing the instructions for this amazing knitted thing.
Wow. So like someone hands you a sketch, maybe a mood board,
Exactly.
and you turn that into like a real knitted garment.
Yeah, and RoleCatcher gives this example
Okay.
of this junior knitter who landed a gig, right, creating samples for a new fashion line.
Oh.
Can you imagine the pressure?
Oh, I'd be so nervous.
Yeah.
So what are the skills you need to really kill it at that stage? It's got to be more than just, I'm good with needles, right?
You're telling me, and this is where RoleCatcher's knitter FAQs are actually super helpful.
Right.
They talk a lot about problem solving.
Right.
Because what happens when a stitch goes wonky or the design just isn't working, you got to figure it out.
Yeah, you can't just unravel the whole thing.
Exactly. And then there's the whole attention to detail thing. One little mistake can throw the whole garment off.
Right.
And on top of that, you've got deadlines, multiple projects, all that.
Oh, so time management is huge.
Huge. You're basically a project manager at that point.
And a therapist for tangled yarn, probably.
Mhm.
But it sounds like there's also a lot of creative collaboration,
Oh, for sure.
especially with designers.
Yeah, RoleCatcher, they highlight how important communication skills are. Like, you have to really understand the designer's vision, but also know when to ask questions.
Right, and how to explain any issues you're having.
Exactly.
This junior knitter stage sounds pretty intense, but like in a good way.
It's where it gets real, you know?
Yeah.
You've honed your craft, and now you're actually building a career.
Totally. And that kind of leads into, I think, what a lot of people are really interested in, which is how do you turn this passion into a business?
Right. Like, how do you actually make money from this?
Yeah. And the cool thing is, RoleCatcher doesn't just talk about the possibilities. They give you actual advice for getting there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now you're speaking my language. I'm all about the side hustle. So what are some of the ways they suggest for actually making money?
Well, teaching is always popular,
Right, classes and stuff.
sharing your skills with other people, watching them get excited about knitting.
Yeah, that's got to be rewarding.
Totally. And of course, there's the whole online world.
Oh, right, like Etsy?
Exactly. Selling your creations, maybe even starting your own website.
And pattern design, right. Like, I bet there's a whole market for those.
Huge. People who are amazing knitters, but maybe not so great at coming up with their own designs.
Right, they need people like that.
Exactly. And the great thing about selling patterns is it's passive income,
You make it once, and then people can buy it over and over.
Exactly. But still, like any business, you need to be smart about it, right?
Totally. It's not just, I'm a good knitter, I'll open a shop.
Right. You need a plan, you need to understand marketing, all of that.
Taxes, all the fun stuff.
Exactly. And the cool thing is RoleCatcher has resources for all of that, too.
Wow, they really do think of everything. It's way more than just, here's how to knit a scarf.
Oh, yeah. This is like, here's how to build a whole career.
I love it. And it really shows how knitting, even though it's such an old craft,
Yeah, ancient. Yeah.
still has so much potential. It's not stuck in the past at all.
It's constantly evolving.
Which brings us to that big question we talked about earlier.
Right. The one about technology.
Yeah, because things are changing so fast in the textile industry.
Absolutely.
Where does hand knitting fit into all of that?
Yeah.
Will it be like more specialized? Will we see more of that like bespoke, handcrafted stuff?
Yeah, because in a world of mass production, that handmade quality, it's almost like it becomes even more special.
Totally.
And the cool thing is, RoleCatcher doesn't try to give you all the answers, but they offer some really interesting perspectives.
Okay, like what?
Well, they talk about how hand knitting can tap into this whole desire for like one-of-a-kind pieces, People want something unique, something with a story behind it.
So instead of trying to compete with like factory-made sweaters,
Right.
knitters could focus on those custom garments, those heirloom quality pieces, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Like imagine knitting a wedding shawl based on a family pattern, something passed down through generations.
Yeah.
Or a baby blanket with the baby's name and birth date knitted right in.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Those are pieces that people would keep forever.
Absolutely. It's like taking the tradition and the sentimentality and then like weaving it into this modern design.
Yeah.
I love that. It seems like there's a real opportunity there for knitters to like find their niche.
100%. And RoleCatcher also sees potential in how hand knitting and technology can actually work together.
Okay, I'm still stuck on that whole 3D knitting thing, but what else is there?
Well, think about wearable technology. Like, what if you could knit sensors right into a garment? Track athletic performance, things like that.
Wow.
Or even interactive textiles, stuff that responds to touch or sound.
You're blowing my mind again. So you're saying I could have a sweater that also monitors my heart rate.
Hey, it's not that far-fetched. And that's what's so exciting, Knitters who are open to those innovations,
Right.
they could be at the forefront of this whole new wave of textile design.
This whole conversation has been amazing.
It's so interesting, right?
I had no idea a career in knitting could be so, like, dynamic.
Right.
It's so much more than I ever thought.
It's a whole world.
So for anyone listening who's like, okay, I need to get me some needles, or maybe they've been knitting for years, but they're thinking about taking it to the next level.
Yeah,
RoleCatcher is definitely the place to start, it seems like.
for sure. They offer so much great advice.
Yeah, it's more than just learning to knit. It's like...
It's a whole career guide.
Yeah, exactly. So check them out, and hey, who knows? Maybe one day we'll have you on the deep dive. You'll be the knitting expert,
I would love that.
sharing your story. But until then, happy knitting, everybody.
To everyone listening, keep creating.